Hi everyone, this is Rayon Paper. Welcome to another video on a very rainy afternoon, which actually feels quite cozy, so I'm not too mad at it. In this video, I would like to introduce to you my 2026 lineup. And even though I've already shown these books because I've got them from they're both hobonichi books, and I showed them, I think, in September or something. Back then, I wasn't really sure how I'm exactly going to use all of the spreads. But I think I've kind of narrowed it down. There's still opportunity to change it before the new year begins, but I think I'm kind of ready to talk about the lineup and how I'll be using it. For the books themselves, there's cat fur everywhere. This is the Hobonichi cousin that I have here, the A5, and I have it in a cover that I bought on Etsy. I forgot the name of the person who made this, but I will link them in the description below if they're still around. I've had this cover for a couple of years now. I used to have my A5 journal in here. My A5 5-year journal. I'm not really currently using that anymore. But this is quite a spacious cover. There's quite a bit of room in here, so I think it'll work even if the planner will bulk up a little bit, which I kind of hope it does. I don't think it's too big. There's too much room, but yeah, we'll see. I've decorated the front with like one sticker, nothing too exciting, but I just thought it would be nice to put something on the cover. I may add more, but for now, I've kind of gone in and, placed some stickers down here and there. There's another one here. I have not really set up these planners, and I've not pre-decorated them, but I have kind of gone in every now and then to kind of familiarize myself with this specific book. And I've just put some stickers down just to kind of get over that blank page anxiety and just, kind of get used to this book. We'll get into that a little bit later, but for now, that's just is this book, the A5 Hobonichi cousin, and then we have the Hobonichi Weeks. This is the antique green color, and it's the Hobonichi Weeks Mega, so that has a couple more pages than the regular one. Well, actually, quite a few more pages. And I've decorated it with some fluffy cat stickers, and I've put a clear cover on top. I don't really like the clear cover, which is also why there's no clear cover involved in this situation. But I feel like with the fluffy cat stickers, the fuzzy stickers, I really need the clear cover, because otherwise it will just scuff too much. And in a couple months, there will only be parts of these cats left because they're not the highest quality. So I just figured I would just protect it with this cover, which I think works well. So how am I going to use these planners? I think it would be nice to do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison, because they have, I was going to say they have similar spreads. That's not entirely true. They're quite different, these two books. But parts of them are similar. So I'm going to open both of them up at the same pages. I'm not really using this calendar page. I'm not covering it up or anything. Sometimes it's nice to have an old calendar for reference, like for the year before or maybe for the next year. So I'm fine with having it there. Then we have this page, which is actually the first real page. Let me just open this up as well on the equivalent in this book, which looks very different. On the hobonichi cousin, you have 6 months with this setup of like one block at the top, then all of the days of the month with one row, and then another block at the bottom. And then the other 6 months are on the next page, like here. And with the hobonichi weeks, there's all 12 months on one spread. Obviously, that leaves you with way smaller boxes per day of the year. And there's this sort of these columns at the top, and no room at the bottom. So what I will do in the hobonichi weeks is the same what I've been doing this year, and that's using it as a running log. I go for runs sometimes. I've been really bad at it for the last couple of months. I think actually since around August, September, when we started going into the process of buying a new home, which has just been very busy and has not left me with much time or energy to go for runs, even though it would probably be good to go, especially when you're like a little bit stressed. I know that for me, it definitely helps to go on more frequent runs, but it's also one of the first things that I just kind of skip doing. But that's what I want to get into doing in this spread. And I will just track when I went for a run by using that specific block. So for example, January 1st, if I went for a run that day, then I will just write in usually how many kilometers I've ran and also the pace at which I ran, because I am not super interested in increasing the amount of kilometers, increasing the distance of my runs, but I'm more interested in getting a little bit faster without, running out of energy before the end of the run. So I want to be able to keep on running for the entire distance, and I kind of want to do that a little bit faster and without straining too much, without like getting injuries or anything. So that's something that I'm interested in. And then I have a little bit room at the top here to either do some decoration or maybe collect some totals, like the total distance ran for that month or the best time or like personal record kind of stuff, or maybe just a little bit of decoration and some information. And what I will use this page for in the hobonichi cousin is probably going to be a weather log. I'm not entirely sure if I need this entire space for that, which is kind of why I'm still a little bit on the fence, because I may be able to squeeze multiple ideas into this one spread or just, shuffle some things around. But I do at least want to keep on logging the weather, which I find especially useful in like kind of the gardening season. So that's like from spring until maybe the beginning of fall, halfway fall, maybe like October, because I find it very interesting to see like when does the garden need a little bit more water, or when has it been very hot or very cold. I find that I kind of don't really notice stuff like that if I don't write it down and be able to really objectively look back and be like, okay, so this was a very rainy day. Or like what happens very often is that I think that it was a very wet period because I feel like it rained every day, but then maybe it was just a very gray period with a little bit of rain, which is still very different for like the soil than a week of intense rains or something like that. And I like logging stuff like this to be able to look back on. I use the official information from the Dutch Meteorological Institute for that, because I just like the fact that you can kind of just download the entire log for the year and just, write it down. Which obviously I won't do it for the entire year at once. I usually go back and I usually like go to their website and update the log, which is like 2 or 3 days at a time. So that's kind of what I plan on doing in here. But I may be able to do that, to log that information elsewhere and use this page for something else. Still a little bit on the fence in regards to that. And then we have the monthly calendar. Now, both of these planners have monthly calendars, and I actually plan on using both of them truly as kind of a calendar. However, currently I'm using a Hobonichi Weeks for this, and I'm squeezing a lot of information in the monthly calendar, and I find myself often being kind of annoyed that the quote-unquote less important information is just as visible as the really important dates. So what I'm thinking is my main calendar, the one that will make sure that I actually show up at appointments and stuff like that, that is going to go in the Hobonichi Cousin. This is what tells me, bin collection day, when I need to go into the office, appointments with friends, family, dentists, all of that stuff goes in here. And then this one is where I will log stuff like when new music is coming out that I'm excited about, or a new update to some of my favorite games to play, or maybe like a book release, or other things that I find interesting to write down and I want to remind myself of, but that are not really super important for my day-to-day life. And if I accidentally sort of miss the date, then it's not a big deal, because I do like writing those things down and, having an overview of what's coming up. But I feel like having those things separated is probably going to work better than doing all of that in one spread. And then we have the weeklies. As you can see, I've already gone in and done a little bit of decorating for the week of Christmas. This one starts at the beginning of December, whereas the other book starts at the beginning of January. So this is the first week in the Hobonichi Cousin, and this is the first week in the Hobonichi Weeks. And I've been kind of trial running this new idea that I have for as far as it's currently possible. And it's quite different than what I've done in the past. But I think this is going to work better for me. What I'm going to do here in the Hobonichi Weeks is kind of micro journaling, memory keeping, writing stuff down that I think I'll be interested to read like next year or the year after that. This is basically going to be the book that I plan on keeping. For now, I keep all of the journals that I have, but there may be a point in time where I'm like, okay, this is getting too much. And then I won't be too interested in my to-do lists or stuff like that, or my appointments maybe, but I will be interested in what I wrote about certain days. So that is what I'm going to do in here. I have tiny handwriting. I tend to not want to write too much in a single day. So I feel like having this little bit of space for each day is enough. And then on the right-hand side, I plan on doing a little bit of decorating. The decoration I've already done for the week of Christmas is more than I would usually do. But I also think that since it's going to be a very busy week where we're going to be away for a bit, visiting family and stuff, that I'm not going to want to write too much on the right-hand side. But basically my idea is that on the right-hand side, I can write some extra stuff about the week. Just like the week in general, maybe not a specific day, but something exciting that happened that I want to kind of elaborate upon. So that's what I want to do on the right-hand side. So all in all, this is kind of a overview of what this week was all about. and what I've done. And I think that's, kind of an interesting way to, or maybe not interesting, but like a fun way to log my year. Kind of what I've been doing in my 5-year journal, but with more decoration and a little bit less writing. And then we have a ton of empty pages in the back that I will be using for all kinds of different writing. Project breakdowns when I'm starting a new project and I just want to work out like what are the specific tasks that fall into this project, the different steps that I need to accomplish. I find that it really helps me to break stuff like that down on paper to make it more manageable. But also like collections, lists, stuff like a media log. When did I start a new book? When did I finish it? Same for like TV shows, movies that I've watched, stuff like that I like to log. And I'm going to do all of that in the back of this book. And maybe just some journaling as well when I feel like I need extra space. And then in this book, I am going to use the weeklies. Let's take a page that I've already done a little bit of decoration on, just for fun. Basically, I'm going to use this as kind of a draft schedule for the week. So I will probably go in here on maybe a Sunday or a Saturday, and I'm kind of going to I'm gonna think like, okay, what's my week gonna look like? When do I have to work? When do I have to go into the office? What stuff do I have already planned that's not work related? What are like things that I want to work on, like personal projects, other stuff that I need to remember? I am gonna write it in the right column, like for the right day. And if it's not day specific, then I have this column on the left. But I'm not going to be too bothered by like the timeline or writing it down in the right order. So it's just like making sure that everything is written down somewhere. And then when I go into the daily pages, I will pull from these lists and think, okay, what do I actually need to do today? And I also want to think about the order that I want to do it in, because I find it really overwhelming to have a long list that is just everything jumbled together for a specific day. And I really like to think about, okay, when I get up in the morning and, I've had breakfast, showered, stuff like that, what's the first thing I want to work on? How much time is that probably going to take me? What else do I want to get done before lunchtime, for example? And I really want to break down my day like that, to be able to make a to-do list that is realistic, that I don't have to worry that maybe I'm, saving very important stuff for last and not getting around to actually doing it. So that is what I will be doing in the daily pages, where I will just use this left-hand column. There's sort of the invisible margin that's not really invisible, but also not very in your face. I will use that column for a really detailed to-do list. Then on the right-hand column, I will basically just use that to write down whatever I need to write down in order to sort of order my thoughts. Write down a thought so that it doesn't keep haunting me throughout the day. Just making sure that I get through the day as organized and with as much clarity as possible, because I know about myself that I get very easily overwhelmed, and I can really get stuck in these kind of thought loops where I know I want to work on something. For example, it's Monday and I'm like, oh, on Wednesday, I really want to start doing this or that. And then I just keep thinking about that because it's not really written down anywhere. And I can just use this right-hand column to write down a couple of lines about, okay, I want to do that. I should remember to do this. Just anything that helps me get my immediate thoughts out onto the paper so that I can either use them when I need to, or maybe not use them at all. Maybe it's just about writing it down and then, it's gone, it's out of my head. And I also want to use it for just random notes that come up during the day. I don't want to be too precious about this book, which I feel like has been kind of the downfall of a lot of my books has been that I want it to be really like nice looking, with like good handwriting and stuff like that. So it can be really precious about using it. And I feel like for the Hobonichi weeks, that's fine. I just need to go in here every day and write a few lines about my day. And I can usually do that at a time when I'm, sitting down with a cup of tea where I'm in a state that it makes sense to take a little bit more time. However, I also want to use this when I'm on the phone with, let's say like dentist, and I need to quickly write down some options for possible appointment dates, or I don't know, not the best example, but just anything that comes up that I'm not like, ooh, what would be the nicest pen to use today? But just, grab what's in front of me and write it down. I still want to use decoration because having a nicely decorated to-do list in front of me, I find that very motivating. I find that puts me in a good mood. But I don't want to have too many rules about what pens do I use on this page. Am I gonna be disappointed if there's lots of empty space? Because I already know that on days where I'm at home the entire day, this page is going to be much fuller than days when I'm into the office. And that's fine. That's completely okay. That's really the mindset that I want to cultivate and want to remind myself of for next year, specifically for this book. And for this book, the smaller one, I really am going to try to make it, look really nice, and make sure that every week is like as full as possible in terms of the writing, because I feel like the space in this book is more manageable to be able to really do that. Then there's a couple of spreads in the back that most of them I don't really have a plan for, and I might not use them until somewhere in the year when I've suddenly realized what I want to do with that page, like these few empty pages in the back. The timetable, I've never really used anything like that. Graph paper, favorites, not really pages that I see myself using, but I am really excited about the My 100. Both of these books have one, and in previous years, I feel like, I'm not really sure, I've only used the Hobonichi Cousin once before, but I feel like the My 100 spanned 2 pages, or like one entire spread. It's on 1 page now, which actually makes it so that I feel like this is around the same amount of space, maybe even a little bit more space in the Hobonichi weeks, which feels a little strange. But there's 2 things that I want to do, but I haven't decided which I want to do in which book, if that makes sense. One thing that I want to track is all of the pen and ink combinations that I've inked up during the year. I will not get to 100, I think, but it will still be fun to see how far I come. Just how much pens and inks I use over the year. So every time I will ink up a pen with an ink, and it's a unique combination, like one that I haven't used before in that same year, which will probably be most of the combinations because I like to try out like a different ink in a different pen each time. I will write that down, and I'm gonna need to write that down quite small because there's not a lot of space, but that's fine. And the other one of the two I want to use for sort of a seasonal bucket list, things that I would like to do during that season. So I'm going to use these columns of 25 items for like winter, spring, summer, autumn, and write down 25 things, or maybe a little less if I can't come up with as much stuff. But like, for example, in summer, I want to go have a swim and have a picnic. And maybe in autumn, I want to bake an apple pie, or, just stuff like that. I got this idea from Michael in the margins, and when I heard him explain it, I'm not sure if it's been a while since I've watched this video where he talked about that, and I'm not sure if I've kind of changed the idea a little bit in my head during the time that I watched this video. But basically, when I heard him talk about that, I was like, yes, that is a great idea for the My 100 page. And I love just seasonal stuff. I love, really being aware of the season that we're in, what that means for, the food that is in season, the activities that really make me enjoy that season, what's happening outside, like what the weather is like, how nature is looking, how our garden is looking. I find that really interesting, and I feel like it's really grounding to be aware of that. And I think my 100 pages are a great place to, think about what you want to do before the season is over, which is always that happens so much faster than I think. But yeah, that is what I want to use these pages for. But I was kind of hoping that I would have the My 100 on 2 pages in this book, which will give me more room to write down the pen and ink combinations. And then I would use the My 100 in the hobonichi weeks for like the seasonal lists. But with the amount of space that I have now, it doesn't matter as much. But I still think that it would be more fun to have the things that I want to do that season in like the memory keeper, and the pen and ink combinations, which are fun to track, but which I also track digitally, to have those in a planner that I may consider, getting rid of after maybe 10 years. So that's kind of my thought process right now. There's a couple more pages that I don't really plan on using. Stuff like the gifts lists, which is something that I track digitally. I'm not actually sure what these lists are. As you can see, I got the Japanese version of the planner, and I specifically got the Japanese version because I find if I can read the quotes at the bottom on the daily pages, I find that kind of distracting. And I do know a little bit of Japanese, but definitely not enough to be able to read this. So I find it just more, now it kind of looks like decoration instead of, actual text that is kind of asking for my attention to read it, which is why I was very set on getting the Japanese version. I do think I got I have the English version of the Hobonichi Weeks, because I think that the store that I bought this from doesn't have the Japanese mega of the Hobonichi Weeks, but that's fine. I'm not looking at these pages the entire day, whereas this one will be probably open on my desk for the entire day. So it's more important here that I have the Japanese text, whereas on the weeks, it doesn't really matter. And the fun thing is that with the English version of the Hobonichi Weeks, you get the 365 days checkoff sheet. I don't know why they don't include it in the Japanese version. It's probably because they have another page there that makes maybe more sense to have in Japanese, but I feel like this can be a really fun thing to track. I have no idea what I want to track for 365 days though. If you have any inspiration, then let me know. I am just seeing now that on day 222, there's a cat. And if you know why that is, please enlighten me. Is that like Cat Day? Is there something like Cat Day? Does it have something to do with the way that the Japanese word for 222 is pronounced? I have no idea why there is a cat there, but it's cute and it suddenly caught my attention. Yeah, I've been rambling for a little while, so I think that we should end the video here. Yeah, I'm really excited about this setup, about this lineup, about having these 2 books. I feel like this is going to be manageable and both very helpful during the year and very fun to look back on. So I feel like I'm in a good place with these 2 books, and I really hope that turns out to be actually the case. I'm really glad that I managed to not buy any extra planners because they're like new and shiny and I want to try them. And I got something that I'm kind of familiar with, and, you know, I'm just enjoying all of the other planners by watching people actually use them instead of having them on my shelf or on my desk being unused and constantly feeling like, oh, why did I get this book? Now I have to fill it and I don't have the time or the energy or blah, blah, blah. So this is going to be good. Yes. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.